1st and 15th, main event live draft edition. Guys, we're a little early. We're here with Dr. Carlos Reyes. Los, how's it good to be on the couch, man?
Man, it's been a dream. I feel like it's stepchild finally gone.
Yeah.
On to the show. But you know, a lot in the making. So
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, for all of our injury-related information, and literally, anytime somebody goes down, he's the first person I hit up, first person I shoot a text message to. Me and Carlos, C Money, Los Money.
Yes.
we go back 20 plus years. We used to record it. We used to record the UT. But people don't know, this is wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. For the good fellas, we're not gonna say who's who, but we got the hardware to prove it. We won plenty of trophies, plenty of IM championships, and we see our names up in the
Raptors.
The Raptors, yeah. So we were legit. But no, we've been in the fantasy football league, the Superflex league, for 20 plus years now, and we will actually be headed to Vegas next weekend.
Yes, sir.
For our live draft.
That's
this is we always like to not really joke, but like we truly believe it's like. Probably like one of the best fantasy leagues like ever. We get together every year. We pick a new location. Vegas seems to be in the rotation every 2 years, so it's just a good time. A lot of good fellas, long history, a lot of competition, a lot of shit talking. So it's nice having you on the couch.
I appreciate it.
So this format really, obviously, we're going to be heading into the main event drafting. So we promise to give our takes. Opinions, you want to call it advice on players we're drafting, draft approach, situations, etc. Anybody who's listening, we'll say it multiple times throughout the show because I'm sure people will be coming in and out. Feel free to drop any questions, comments. Really, we just appreciate y'all tuning in. And then for those who are viewing this afterwards, which I'm sure is most of y'all, feel free to hit us up anytime. 1st and 15th on Twitter at Skywalker. My personal account, Twitter
at rsports33.
You got Chris, the original Chris on Twitter, and our boy 2_Deo. So we're gonna be starting here pretty soon. So this is this is like I want this to be a very unique format, a format in which we could get as much injury information out as possible. For those of us who are drafting, doesn't matter if it's a family league, if it's a friends league. If it's like a work league, if it's a high stakes league, if it's the main event, like we all care about whether or not a guy is going to be healthy enough to be in our starting lineup week 1 and is going to be healthy enough throughout the year. So what better way of getting that information than to have someone available to you, have the doc right next to your side as you're drafting. So I really wanted to create that type of atmosphere because it's one thing to say a guy's injury prone. It's another thing to say a guy's coming off an ankle injury, but it's something completely different to be on the clock and for me to be able to look and say, hey, man, is Jalen Waddle safe here? Like what you said, I'm debating between Chris Olave and Jalen Waddle. Is the injury not serious at all? If it's not serious at all, I got to hire my ranks just by one spot. So I'm going to click him if you give me the okay. So that's the type of, interaction. That's the type of sort of kind of conversations that we want to have. I want to take all of that injury expertise that we see on Twitter that, and there's a lot of guys out there who do an amazing job, but we only got one guy on the couch, and this is a guy that I've trusted for 20 years, and honestly, he does not steer me wrong. The last thing that I'm going to say, and I'll let him go into this a little bit, is I always talk about having 2 ACL surgeries, okay? A little bit too TMI, but I talk about it for a reason, Despite the IM championships, I know I'm not a professional athlete, so I'm not trying to compare myself to those guys out there. But still, going through that process, the surgery is nothing. The rehab to me is everything. The surgeon, yes, you want an excellent surgeon who can do the repair, who can get you back to starting rehab ASAP. But that rehab process is just something else. And I think me having gone through that to just, it allows me to kind of understand what players have to go through as far as feeling, 100% pre-injury and trying to get back to as close as 100% post-injury, if not better. So hopefully he can, give a little bit of info on that. But Carlos,
yes,
you got the mic in front of you.
I appreciate it.
What you want the people to know out there?
First of all, I just want to give a shout out to Abby. Like I said, we've been, friends for over 20 years now. So, man, we've been going back and forth, ever since meeting this guy. Like, fantasy football mind has definitely improved over the years. I can't tell you how much of that is, but over the years, too, it's just more of the friendship, the brotherhood that we've built. And like I said, something about those injuries, it's something more like trying to give you just real-time analysis. It's one thing to hear it from, the analysis out there. They're going to tell you kind of very specifically, like, this gentleman's going to be out like 3 to 4 weeks. This guy's going to be like 6 to 8 weeks. So it's like, where's the substance behind that? Like, why is he going to be out 6 weeks? Why is he going to be out 8 weeks? And just kind of give you some knowledge on, what to expect when that rehab process occurs, because that's going to be the most important is sometimes, specifically with these teams, they're going to give you more of like a broad general term, specifically with the conditions themselves. I'm going to be able to come back in here and just give you a little bit more specifically, what to expect. Oftentimes, they're just going to give you, a little bit of what that injury is, but it's hard to know, exactly what's going on specifically if you're not on that team, if you're not the physician, if you're not that PT that's giving those things inside the facility themselves. And they're not going to want to relinquish that information, to everybody, because again, that's going to be a disadvantage for them, right? Because they're going to just know a lot more about that player. But knowing what we know from some of the reports and then giving you some real-time analysis as, the injuries are happening, I'm able to at least analyze that, give you some more expert advice when it comes to actually the rehab. What is actually these guys doing to get you back into the field? And that's kind of part of what I do in real life, actually. So I bring, some of these athletes, like having them go from these 2 ACLs, coming back onto the court.
I'm telling you, I was having issues getting back onto the basketball court, and like I had seen therapists, and I was like, Carlos, man, look, I'm having issues with the quad. I'm having issues with my quad tendon. Like, I can't jump the way that I used to. Hooked me up with the exercise, got me on the right protocol. So,
All right.
Good example.
Let's cut straight to the shit, man. Listen, you're the second pick right now.
What do people want to know?
Right. Who are you thinking? Because listen, Justin Jefferson usually goes number 1. You have that number 1 pick. Who do you see as that? I know you want to go receiver here. So
I don't know.
You're not going
to
running back. Stop.
This is live. We don't know.
You have the number 2 pick. So what difference does it make? If Jefferson fell to you, then you're going Jefferson.
Maybe I don't want Jefferson.
Like, what would you say?
Like your top? No. I think so we do have updated rankings. Okay. You guys have seen the previous pod. We've had a ranking in the ticker. I will admit that has not been updated,
right.
But we will update it for the next pod. So and then y'all can always shout out to us on Twitter again at Person15. For any questions with regard to if we like a certain player over a certain player. Number 2, the 102. We started off this off season. I had Chase as my number 1 overall. Okay, and then we had the Burrow injury, and I was like, all right, we got to fall back a little bit. I think I backed to Chase as my number 1 overall.
Jamar Chase.
Yes.
The same guy who has T. Higgins on the other side.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it comes down to...
The same guy who just got Irv Smith at tight end now. Come on.
Irv Smith. Who was Irv Smith now? I'll tell you why. To me, it comes down to volume. Yes, he has an elite wide receiver on the other end. But to me, that helps him out. Okay? That helps him out. When all of the volume is... you have that such a narrow target tree, and you have that much volume, and the offense... The best part of the offense is easily the passing game, and the most efficient part of the offense is easily the passing game. And I think they figured this out towards the back end of last year. I've been on record as stating this. Like, I think this is Burrow's like MVP season. I think this is his best year he's going to have, and I think Chase is going to help him get him there. And I still think Higgins is going to pay off his 3rd round ADP. So I'll probably be taking Chase here unless Jefferson falls, in which case I'll likely go Jefferson. I'm definitely giving some thought to Kelsey. If you guys didn't check out the last pod, again, we had an absolute beast, a GOAT in the industry. Dave Hubbard, come on. He's not on Travis Kelsey. That's clock.
All right, there we go.
Kelsey's somebody I haven't drafted much. I want to get a couple of shares here or there, but
we have one on our pod draft too.
We do have one on the pod. That's how. That was the one. That was the one.
That's just all right.
Okay. So as we,
now you are on the clock.
So I saw Justin Jefferson go number 1. So I'm not gonna waste too much time.
All right. Went Chuck. You gonna go Chase?
More Chase.
I really don't get George. Unless you are saying that T. Higgins is not that guy,
T.
I
Higgins
just don't
is
get
that guy. But this is the thing. Their pie is just divvied up into 2, maybe 2.5, at most 3 slices.
I don't know.
And it's a big pie.
If I'm gonna take a guy
It's a big
second
pie.
overall, like
It's a big
I
pie.
want him to have like a narrow target tree, like Justin Jefferson.
But we saw Tyreek Hill kill last year. He had Jalen Waddle.
I think that's an outlier.
It's a narrow target tree. We've seen Hill and Kelsey kill together. Narrow target trees.
Yeah, but that's different because Kelsey killed in reference to being a tight end, right? Like playing in a tight end premium.
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith.
I
It
think
does happen.
it does.
He's an outlier, but they
I think
happen.
last year was an outlier year.
Okay, we'll see. I love Chase here. You can't take that away from me. So we're seeing the board fall. So we're seeing a couple of running backs go off. C-Mac, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler. And I think we come to our first injury question mark of the day, Cooper Kupp. So what are your thoughts just in general? Like, is this a guy that we can like safely draft in the first round, in the mid-first round, early first round? Should we be waiting later, given the risk? Just what are your general thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, I think if you're like 1 through 4, I think 1 through 4, you can probably say that there are probably a higher wide receiver core up on there on the draft board. But if you're like mid-round, I think you can feel safe, more specifically because he's already returned to practice. He did have what we call more of a mild grade 1 hamstring strain.
Yeah.
So, the writing on the wall is that he's getting older, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes some of these injuries occur, obviously, when you start getting older and you start having some of these volume, individuals playing a lot of these games. But, if you look at his past history, specifically like with his injuries, he's made some very remarkable recoveries coming from these,
Through the
injuries.
ACL.
And he's continued to show that, right? And so he understands his body. It's not anything, he understands his body very well.
Yeah.
And more specifically for shutting him down, not going through preseason, it's hard to say what these guys are actually experiencing, more specifically in these hamstrings. Like, was it really a moderate hamstring strain like a Jerry Jeudy, right? When you look later, but in the first round, more specifically with the volume of what's going to happen around him, I think you can say that Cooper Kupp is going to have that value in that first round specifically.
Okay, so you feel comfortable taking him at the 1.
Yeah, because there's no setbacks. You haven't heard anything really, setbacks.
Okay.
He's progressively made more progress as time has gone on. He's back to practice. He's going down to full speed. And he's already making a big push for week 1.
Yeah.
And so again, it would be more of a concern if I had heard some other reports other than making that good progress.
Yeah. I think, and I've been really, just sort of kind of injury agnostic, when it comes to like a lot of some of these aging wide receivers and aging players.
Mhm.
I mean, with the exception of just some of the running back where it's clear that their efficiency is just kind of falling off the board. I think when it kind of comes to some of these wide receivers, some of these guys are just elite and they can perform at, more advanced ages than other positional players. So I think one of the first things I wrote in my draft notes, because I just can kind of see what was happening last year and what the kind of narrative was like, don't undervalue some of the older elite, wide receivers or older elite players heading into 2023. And again, that's kind of one reason why I've not been scared to click Devontae Adams in the second round.
Right.
So I promised to ask this question at the top of this episode. Someone on Twitter said, I'm in a keeper league, a 10-man half PPR with bonus for 100 yards receiving and 100 yards rushing. We can keep 3 from the 5th round on. Any guys you think from the 5th on who made, because his punctuation is kind of sketchy. Any guys you think from the 5th on who may be early round picks next year because they smashed this year? Any rookies going later than you like?
So he is in a keeper league.
He's in a keeper league, a 10-man, and he's saying or later. Before you address that, let's talk about how like the different leagues affect how you draft, because you draft not only on FFPC, but you draft in other leagues as well. Like, how does the actual format affect how you draft?
I think it's very important. I think a lot of people don't really appreciate it. Obviously, Dynasty and Keeper go without saying they're going to be very different than an FFPC or redraft in general. But I think things like, how many wide receivers are you required to start? If you're required to start 3 wide receivers, to me, it is very important that you're in the wide receiver game early and at least trying to get one of those elite wide receivers, or else you're just constantly fighting for behind. How many flex positions do you have and what can go in those flex positions?
Yeah.
So FFPC, you only required to start 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes.
Yeah.
So this is a league where, like, if it's the right RB and you want to kind of play around with who the right RBs are, if it's the right RB, you can really do a lot of unique builds and try to hope to hit on running backs that will stay healthy and that potentially can be workhorses, especially in this given year. So you don't necessarily have to go after 5, 6 wide receivers as you would maybe in like an NFFC league where you got to start 3 or some of the best ball leagues. But getting back to this guy's question, I don't 5th round and later. It really just kind of depends on who's there.
On what that roster is.
Yeah, what your roster is. That is a very kind of broad question to have. I think what I would need are a list of players that are going in the 5th round and later in this keeper league. That's a tough question to ask. Go ahead and DM me with a list of players, your roster, and I will be happy to try and get Dale, the dynasty expert, to answer that now, and I'll chime in as well. Yeah. So we're coming up here. We're 3 picks away. I'm going to start trying to fill my queue. We've obviously had some new information that's come up. Waddle just went. That was player at the top of my queue.
All right. Carlos, we have a question here where, who is this? This is Ryan Bickmore says, hey, Cooper Kupp has been injured before. Any elevated concerns knowing that he's been banged up before? And this is not the first time that there's been some issues with that hand.
Not necessarily, right? Because, there's a lot of, you go off a lot of statistics, but, these injuries, more specifically when they've got a really good rehab team around them, more specifically with Kupp. Now, if it was somebody else that had just constant recurring just every single year, then I have a little bit more concern. But it's not something that we've seen Kupp have, every single year. If he's had some significant injuries, but they've been some contact injuries, right? So nothing really of that soft tissue concern. And oftentimes when you see these things happening, they're going to happen in the first few weeks of getting back into training camp, back into practice, right? It's expected, right? So with Cooper Kupp specifically, I just don't have that same concern as I would have someone, that has kind of that constant recurring hamstring injury every single year, right? And every single year they come in. Unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate. But there are a lot of bad things that go behind some of the soft tissue injuries. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the statistics for the NFL, and of course specifically the injuries, hamstring is actually at the top. Hamstring is a soft tissue injury that happens more often than not. And so some of these are to be expected, but again, you would hope that they happen less to these top players themselves.
Yeah. All right. So we got to address this Josh Jacobs pick because I am not a fan. And someone said bell cow receiver with the bell cow running back. I don't know if Josh Jacobs is necessarily going to be a bell cow running back, but you took him here in the 2nd round. Do you think you had to take him there?
No, I didn't have to take him there. I just took the best player that was available. This is, there's a couple things with this question. So definitely, I have Carlos kind of chime in on the idea. He's 2 weeks away.
All right.
So one, to me, running backs don't need to be in the camp. That's historically been kind of, where people have. I didn't play running back, but this is what I've read. This is what I've heard from multiple sources. But this is what I've heard.
This is
what I've heard. Is that it's an easy position to learn, and we've seen that. I've seen literally, guys. Sean McVay called a guy off his couch to play in the Super Bowl. So I don't think it's necessarily a position that's hard to play. You saw Jonathan Taylor go there.
Ooh, that's early for JT.
Is it we pause? I'm on the 7 o'clock here. Okay, so this is a draft too. Also, where I just want to get my guys, and I really want to build the team that I want to build in the way that I want to build it. So I'm not worried about ADP. And I've said this kind of all year. I really draft irrespective of ADP. I got 4th round Josh Jacobs shared. I have tons of 3rd round Josh Jacobs shared because I just took that risk. Paid off. Okay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. one paid off. At least for now, we'll see his paid off. So, but I don't mind like now taking him, especially at the back end of the second. I don't mind that. And I kind of went in with this draft, understanding that knowing what ADP is. I think it's important to know what ADP actually is.
Who you taking, man? I mean,
But
you're getting me nervous here.
So we're gonna get,
All
we're
right,
gonna get there.
now.
But yeah, so yeah, understanding like what ADP is, I think is important because now like I kind of have a general sense of like who could potentially be there. But more so like if a guy is there that I'm not quite sure of, I want to have it ahead. I want to be ahead in my mind as far as okay, what am I going to do if I'm on the clock so I'm not having to kind of think too hard. And you can't plan too much in the draft. But sometimes I like to try to, especially when I'm at the back end. I don't want to be forced into a position. So here, I like the idea of getting a running back if there's a running back that I like. You know, if it's a tie between a running back and a wide receiver, I like the idea of splitting the difference. So that way, when it comes back to me, nobody knows what I'm going to do. And the guy in team 3 is not trying to cock block me by taking a position that he thinks I may take. And so it just makes it's just a little bit of gamesmanship. There's another gamesmanship that I was going for with this as well, and we'll see if it kind of pans out. But Carlos, I want to get your thoughts on running backs, wide receivers. I don't know if it matters, but guys who kind of hold out during training camp, come back. How much time do you think they really need before we have to worry about them like being at an increased injury risk or anything like that?
Yeah, I think maybe just as the older that they get, maybe a few weeks, right? 3 to 4 weeks of actual training camp or some sort of practicing. But with Josh Jacobs, like he's a veteran, right? Who's to say that he wasn't doing all of that stuff on his own and with his own camp, right? It's just stuff that you see or you hear of these reports. But I guarantee you, this man was doing what he needed to do.
And he seems like Josh Jacobs got a personality and a history, right? Like he's probably growing.
Exactly. And now maybe take 1 or 2 weeks for him to kind of wrap up again and get the feel for the game speed again. Yes, I think so. But as far as like his body and his control, like I think for him specifically for Josh Jacobs, I think it's not going to take him long to do that, right? Because he already understands. He understands the game. He was league rushing last year, and so he understands, right? He understands what it's taking to play 18 games, not 2 games the first season.
And I like where I got him to. I mean, I don't think he's going to repeat what he did last year. I don't need him to, but I like that he has an immobile quarterback who's not going to be afraid to dump it down. I'm not scared of Zamir White. I'm really honestly not worried about that at all. I like that they gave him a little bit more money. That says something to me. They weren't just like sign his paper. He actually, I think, got a little bit better of a contract. We don't know the specifics of it just yet, but they actually gave him a tad little bit more money just to kind of appease him. And I love the fact that he tweeted out that I'm back. That the devil.
He's ready to go.
I like that. I like that. Getting back to the Keenan Allen pick, I know this.
I love that pick.
Yeah, so he's been my guy. So like I said, I want to go at the guys, and again, this kind of goes back to the discussion of the aging wide receiver. It's a risk. Granted, it's a risk. But I just love the offense that they brought over. And like from day one, when Kellen Moore went over to the Chargers, I had 2 thoughts. One, that Herbert was finally going to be unleashed, and that we were going to see his receiving options outside of the running backs unleashed, and then also that we were probably going to see a drop in targets for Austin Eckler, which is one reason why I haven't been drafting Austin Eckler where he goes. If I can get him later, then yeah, but I can't take him where he currently goes. I'm worried about that too much, and maybe he makes that for it in the TD department, but that's a little bit hard. That's really hard. So knowing in my mind, what I did was I took what has historically been done in this offense in the past, in Kellen Moore's offense, who's kind of been the lead guy, and to be there with CeeDee Lamb. And I looked at that team and I said, who's the closest CeeDee Lamb guy on the Chargers? And easily to me, it was Keenan Allen. I don't think these offensive coordinators just go to these spots and just completely invent their playbook. They change things, they tweak things, but I don't think they completely.
Oh, that's a take.
So
that's a hot take.
So I think for me, like I'm looking at him, and there's been reports that he said as much too as well. To some degree, that he's kind of having that CeeDee Lamb role. So if he can stay healthy, I really love that. I love the offense that he's in. I love the divisions that he's in. So I'm hoping for some shootouts.
Let's talk about Calvin Ridley for a second. So we normally don't see guys miss an entire season without some type of injury.
Yeah.
I kind of liken it to a holdout, and we've only seen who what's the running back, Pittsburgh running back who held out? Le'Veon Bell. I kind of see this as a Le'Veon Bell situation. I think we all agree that Le'Veon Bell came back after missing that season and did not look the same and didn't have the type of future that we were expecting. Calvin Ridley has been out of the NFL for an entire season. Is there any concern that he's not going to come back and be the same guy now that he's – I mean, taking a whole year off of football, man, like that's a lot.
I think just mainly from like the physical performance itself, you know, especially for these young guys, like the less hits they take, the better.
Yeah.
Right. More specifically with someone of his highest caliber, but it's almost to his benefit that he was able to rehabilitate because he was coming off some foot, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
Some foot problems, so he was able to really get his body right. And more specifically, he's got a pretty good team around him to get him back into that shape again. So he's had, you know, ample time to progressively get his body back to this performance. More specifically, you know, to get him right because he knew he was going to be back in the NFL. It wasn't an injury that put him out, right? It was just, you know, unfortunate events. But I think in his mind, what he did from that point on was just systematically say, okay, I have now, you know, 8 to 10 months to now really, you know, focus on getting my body to this point, right? And now we're about to, I really feel is that you're really going to see, you know, a full Ridley now, you know, apart from what we saw in Atlanta, you know, now with Trevor Lawrence, like, did he have that type of caliber, you know, quarterback throw to him? I don't think he did. No. But now with this offense, he doesn't have to be the guy, but I think he's going to be the guy. Because that focus is not going to be on. So I think with this year off, I think it just really was more of a benefit for him. I think you're going to see why you're going to see him rise in these ADPs. Like, I mean, he continues to rise in the ADPs, more specifically.
So when I look at that third round, like to me, the third round in any draft is kind of the trickiest round. Because like when I look who's available, I see a lot of trap plays. DK Metcalf to me is a trap play. Jahmyr Gibbs to me is a trap play. Like if I'm going to take a running back that early, I want him to be a starting running back.
I don't know if it's trap plays, but it's hard because I don't think any guys in that round are truly just going to bust us. I think they're all going to be useful. I can see a scenario where DK is just like killing it. I really could. I don't, you know, we'll ask him about JSN here pretty soon, but I can still see DK just being an elite wide receiver. I gave a lot of thought to Calvin Ridley. So I love this. I love this here.
All right. Who are you thinking? Let's look at the player pool for a second and see who's available. Got some Christian Watson there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna waste too much time with this. Christian Watson falling down to the 411. You know, I don't want to call him a boom bust, but he's someone who can boom. Like I think he's got he maybe has a lower floor ish than others that just kind of went before him, but I think his ceiling is astronomical. I really, really, truly believe that, and I love having him paired on this team. So to me, honestly, like this draft really couldn't have started off any better. I'm going to have some real decisions here at the 5-2. You know, I purposely didn't go quarterback in the second and third, with the idea that maybe if I can push the quarterback position back a little bit further, and have you know slots 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 6, grab a QB, and maybe Burrow falls back to me. You know, because he just kind of falls in that pocket where, you know, players are wanting to be taken, or guys want to take other players ahead of him. But he went, so no Burrow with Chase Stack, which is okay. More than fine. And I'm actually happier in this situation because I feel like I got a guy who could potentially be truly elite. So I'll have some decisions here in the fifth, though.
All right. I mean, I still don't get Bijan in the first round, but I know that you got him in your top 12, so I'll just bypass that question. I don't get it.
Volume, man. Volume. They ran more than any team last year, and they ran efficiently. He's an elite talent. He can catch the ball.
They ran efficiently with who?
With Tyler Algier.
Is he still on the team? Is he?
I knew what that was going. But honestly, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, you just historically look at running backs that have been taken as high as he has been taken. Like, you can just lean on that alone. Like, those guys get volume, and those guys usually produce. So Kyle Pitts, that was an interesting selection here.
That
So
was. Yeah.
I got a lot of different ways that I can go. I can look at quarterback here. The obvious name is, I'm not going to say his name. Not that it matters. I can look at tight end here. I can look at running back here. This is a very, very difficult decision for me to make. I'm not going to lie. And this is kind of where it comes down to, like, for me, like understanding, okay, what does ADP look like? What could potentially, be at my advantage a little bit later in the draft in certain spots and situations.
Mm-hmm.
And even knowing that, I'm still having a very, very difficult decision here as far as trying to figure out who to take. But I'm going to take a chance here, and we're going to go get a guy that I'm very high on and a bit high on. We're going to go Rashad White here.
I like that. Yeah.
So, again, I know Rashad White
Very so
is much later. But, again, I'm just looking for guys. What is in your realm of possibility? What is in your range of outcomes? And to me, again, start off with the offensive coordinator. Who's the offensive coordinator? Dave Canales coming over from Seattle. So I think that is an important basis to have. And when I start with that, and when I start, just listen throughout the offseason, what they said, I look at the backfield behind him. And to me, this is a chance for him to be a true bell cow. And we had one nice preseason game very recently where he really dominated touches, and he actually looked very, very good doing so. A big knock on him last year was efficiency. And it's just one preseason game, but I still like what I saw. I think, I don't know what this offense is going to be, but I think they are very, very undervalued. Most of their pieces are anyway. So, and I like this balance. Again, when it comes back to me, no one's really going to know what I'm going after. So ideally, I have something that falls to me in the right position, or in the falls to me at least at value. So there's one guy that's still on the board who would normally be taken off the board at this stage, and that's Jerry Jeudy.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, if you just had to throw a number out there or throw a week out there, when would you expect Jerry Jeudy back for the regular season?
Probably around week 5.
Week 5.
Week 5.
Ooh.
You said week 5?
Speak on that. You said week 5. Speak on that.
Because, with the MRI, we're not going to be able to see the MRI itself. But for them to call it a moderate, hamstring strain, they didn't come out saying that it was mild. They didn't say, 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 3 weeks. More specifically, when you have a moderate hamstring, it takes not only time for it to heal, but it takes time for you to ramp up. And more specifically, when they do bring him back, it's going to be on a pitch count. They might not even just unleash him that first game back, right? Because a la Keenan Allen last year. What happened when they brought him back too soon? Re-aggravated that hamstring. He had to sit out a couple more games and then came back, right? So very similar to this situation, specifically with Jerry Jeudy. When you're talking about a grade 2 hamstring strain, it takes time for that hamstring to truly come back to its restitution of that muscle, because there's so many components and mechanics that happen with that. It's not only the sprinting, it's the cutting, it's the braking, it's the constant, increased intensity on that muscle to maintain its capacity. And you're asking a lot every single game, right?
And considering that they won't be any good, what's the rush in coming back, right?
Exactly.
So,
I'm
just saying.
I just don't think they're going to rush him. Like, I really don't think they're going to rush this. They don't want it to be a, full-on season, injury where now he's coming back in and out of that lineup. You're going to be like, no, shut you down.
Yeah.
Let's truly get you, ready. And again, when you're talking about, grade 2 hamstring strains, that can take anywhere between, like, the longest 8 weeks. Yeah. And if you don't re-aggravate it, even longer.
Oh, man.
And so, those are no joke. Like I said, it's the number 1 soft tissue injury in the NFL. And if that's the case, they're going to be systematically safe bringing them back. And so I can see why Jerry Jeudy is going to fall through these rounds, right? Because you're going to have to then take in consideration, okay, I might not have him back till week 4, week 5, right? So if you're going to consider him your wide receiver 2 at that point, you're going to have to try and look elsewhere at that time, right?
Yep.
So that's why. And it's unfortunate, because you really don't want to see those things happening to this type of athlete. There was so much buzz around him, and more specifically in this offense and Champagne's offense. But it happened, right? And so you have to be realistic with it. and be realistic with it gives you an opportunity to then adjust and be flexible with what you're doing inside your drafts.
But do you like Rashad White? Well, I mean, you clearly like Rashad White over James Cook, but I kind of see James Cook that has like the higher upside.
So that kind of came down to I don't necessarily know that he has a higher upside. That's a tough discussion. I understand that, like being in like a better offense theoretically, so I get that aspect of it. I think it came down to just diversification.
Yeah.
And been kind of pounding the table on James Cook, so I wanted to switch it up and go a little bit of Rashad White.
Yeah. What do you think about Dobbins? So, like, is Dobbins injured, or is he holding out, or is it a mixture of the two? Like, should we be looking at Dobbins as like with more criticism, or I guess like more skepticism? Because like he just went in a 6, but if we knew that he was holding out the same way that we knew that JT and at some point Jacobs was holding out, like shouldn't we be dropping Dobbins a bit? And they just signed Melvin Gordon, although I think Melvin Gordon.
I think Dobbins is an interesting component because he did suffer that significant multi-ligament injury.
Mm-hmm.
We did see him go through some setbacks during the season. He had to get arthroscopic debridement at the same time. They shut him down for a couple. Right, so he had an up and down season last year. So I can understand the hesitancy this year, and more specifically, for individuals drafting them, earlier than the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
This year he's almost far well removed from that injury, and ultimately the statistics show that 2 years past an injury, more specifically a multi-ligament injury, it's going to be the safer set, right? You're going to see that production rise. You're going to see that, that improvement rise, and then you're going to see volume rise at the same time.
Yeah, one reason why I draft running backs coming off ACL first year. I'll just, I'll be okay missing the boat.
Yeah.
You can kind of talk to me about elite, profiles and guys, who can, potentially buck a trend. And the one incident we had of Adrian Peterson, from the running back position, but I'll just be okay missing those guys.
Yeah.
Getting those guys the second year, because that's the beautiful thing. It's like if they disappoint the first year, the second year people just have a bad taste in their mouth, and their ADP drops, so they go lower than they should, and that's when you can rise. So it's like you potentially get a double win. And that's kind of what I've done with Dobbins this year, and hopefully that pays off. So I'm going to have a tough decision coming up here. There's a guy who's also falling right now in ADP due to injury, Terry McLaurin. Give me your thoughts on Terry McLaurin. When is he going to play?
Unfortunately, Scary Terry had a little turf toe injury, right? What is a turf toe, right? It's hyperextension of that first metatarsal joint, right? And so when you're talking about that, you most specifically have, a plate underneath that joint position that gets sprained or at least overstretched. And at the same time, you got some muscle and tendons that live right through there, right? So very specific ones that are most important for push-up, right? So for going to flexion. And so, with the reports coming out from, Scary Terry, it doesn't seem that there was any structural damage, significant structural damage. They didn't see any fractures, right? So in this case is that they can bring them actually back a little earlier, because what they'll do is they'll put a little orthotic inside there, and they'll put actually what's called a turf toe shank, and that's just a shank that goes underneath the toe, and that disallows the toe to go into extension.
Interesting.
As he goes into more and more confidence with that, as it heals better throughout the season, then that shank is removed, right? So I can see that happening. I can see that where he's going to actually make a push for week 1 and just use that orthotic, right?
Okay. Is he going to be effective week 1 though?
He may not.
Okay. When do you think he will be effective?
I think he'll be effective around, let's say, week 2, week 3.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Jahan Dotson to the moon.
Yeah.
To the moon.
Because,
well, if it's only 2 weeks, I mean.
But don't forget, this is still like they're still installing their offense right now, right? Like
they're installing it all offseason.
Right, but if he's not there, and like he was hurt last week, so you gotta. I mean,
I think like if you're gonna miss time, I think this will be the time to miss when it's just been kind of dress rehearsal. And the talks were that him and Sam Howell were we're actually gelling. So it's gonna be a tough decision.
Yeah, it is. Specifically for those type of injuries, especially with those lower grade sprains, 2 to 4 weeks. Right? We would expect them to be out in 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
And it really depends on where they're at specifically with the symptoms.
Yeah.
How much pain are they having?
Yeah.
And what's their push off when you're doing these accelerations?
Okay.
All right.
And so, it doesn't sound like there's any significant damage. There's reports of them having significant damage. And that's why it leads me to believe that they're going to probably try and bring him back a little sooner. And he's just going to have to wrap up and get used to having that plate underneath him.
Okay.
So,
All right, so let's look who's available. Mm-hmm.
All that being said,
Mm-hmm.
I think what it comes down to for me is like who was I on before the injury, and I still had guys ahead of him before the injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to lean towards those guys now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with this build right now, I can go in so many different ways. I don't feel pressure at all in any ways.
Mm-hmm.
So just to me, it opens up the world. So I'm going to go with the guy who we're going to double down on the Alvin Kamara. And I feel like I'm in a good position here because I can safely say it's not going to be a quarterback that I'm going to be taking, in the 7th round, and maybe not for a minute. Who knows? We'll see. But drafting from this position, I don't have a tight end, I don't have a wide receiver, so if I got to worry about who am I starting week 1, I'll be drafting a skill position player likely in the 7th spot. So to me, basically, like Alvin Kamara can sit on my bench.
Yeah.
He can sit on the bench, and then when he comes back, he comes back. And I'm just, I'm hoping for volume. I'm hoping for the quarterback that fed Josh Jacobs last year and turned it into a very nice receiving option is going to feed Alvin Kamara this year. And then I'm not going to have to worry so much about the touchdowns. I think he will get some touchdown regression. I think the days of 15-plus touchdowns from Alvin Kamara are gone, but we don't need that. I don't need that. That's the one tough. That was the one tough thing is just not knowing he would fall back to me. But again, for me in this situation, I feel like there were a lot of different options on the table for me. I just there were 2 main guys that I really wanted to get. Terry McCormick was actually 3rd on that list, so we'll see if he takes the 2nd here.
and again, if you don't take him there, he's going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like he's not going to be there. Right? And I think the more and more you hear about just being suspended for 3 games, plus this offense coming up, like he just keeps rising on people's radar. Right? Whereas before he was just not even on anybody's radar. I remember drafting in like June and July, he was going down in the 8th round, 9th round.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's insane.
Absolutely.
And more specifically for this type of player, right? The potential in which he has, more specifically if you insert him as your running back 2, the running back 3. So I really like that pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you are on the
All
clock.
right, so
Ooh, James Conner is there for you.
So Trevor Lawrence fell there. I did give some thought to Trevor Lawrence. We talk about stacking the media there a little bit, and forth on that all the time. He's partially right as far as kind of when sometimes I consider it. So if I had gone Ridley there and I had strongly considered starting off Chase, Ridley, Allen, then it's something that I may have considered, grabbing Lawrence over Kamara. Here, I got a lot of guys that I'm looking at. This is a tough decision for me, a real tough decision. I'm going to sit here and think about this one for a little bit. Sometimes
See who's available.
Just gotta mess up.
I mean, but you got some options, though. I mean, you still got James Conner there.
Yeah. And
You can get splashy.
so,
Ball.
so I went James Conner here.
Yeah,
I've always been hesitant to draft James Conner in any significant early round. 7th round is absolutely my limit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because I'm not worried about what his early season production is going to be. I'm worried about what his late season projection is going to be. But like we talked about before in the past, like, guys I'm drafting in the 7th round, or maybe even the round before, I don't necessarily need to have them there for the money weeks. If they can get me to the money weeks, I can be happy and okay with that. So knowing that he should really be the bell cow back, they're going to be down in games, and he's going to be the 3rd down back. I think he's just going to fall into 4 or 5 receptions a game for the first weeks. And I'm just going to see how long we can ride that out. And on this team, like Kamara, who I'm expecting to be there towards the back of their rounds, I kind of love that pairing there. I love the Conner-Kamara pairing. I think a lot of people kind of go to the idea of Jamal Williams and Kamara. Here, I like the idea that I have Connor, who could potentially, ideally, give me much longer term value, and hopefully not the entire season, while Kamara is sort of kind of working his way back.
Right, talking about those like handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
I talked about Kamara and then Jamal Williams, right? More specifically, like knowing that if like your first, running back went down,
Yeah.
you're gonna handcuff him with like your second guy, right? Where do you think it's more valuable to find like a different handcuff from like a different team that has higher value than the actual handcuff to the guy that you picked, right? Like Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, right?
Yeah. I think honestly, like I may be in one draft and I may handcuff Derrick Henry to Tajay Spears because I really like Tajay Spears, and maybe I just sell myself on the idea that I'm only doing it because Derrick Henry could get to get traded. But this has been a year where really I have not been targeting handcuffs. We talked about it, multiple times, that we kind of live in an age of RBBC. There's like very true actual bell cows, but more specifically, they're very true like handcuffs. Like even like, and today was a perfect example. Jerome Ford, and he may still be the handcuff. We don't know. I threw that question out there on Twitter. Exactly. So I threw that question out there just because, like, again, we don't know. Like we really don't know. Jerome Ford was not this just sort of kind of amazing receiving back, this amazing passing down back. So we don't know what they had planned for who or what they were looking for. And he's also been injured, so we don't even know what that status is of Jerome Ford. But he started off the season as just being like one of these elite handcuffs, and even though it's the later round, there's still valuable players in that round. So I have been like, really kind of fading handcuffs in that range, those early handcuffs, and just scooping up guys that could potentially be valued. And, up until recently, it was just like a bunch of, Rashad Bateman's.
Right.
It was, Marvin Mims is like, I think my highest owned player.
Right.
It was a lot of those types of players. And for me, I think, until like the board starts to tighten up, I'm going to continue, avoiding those players. So we just saw another injured player, injury prone, or player that recently injured go off the board. JSN. Talk to us about JSN.
Yeah, that was a little bit more surprising, when they announced, the reports of having a wrist fracture. And I think Pete Carroll's actually came out and said he's got a slight fracture. It's like, well, I mean, there ain't no slight here, right? You call them different, right? Different types. Hairline fracture, full fracture. There is no slight fracture. A fracture is a fracture, right? So, when we talk about just bone healing in itself, it takes anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks for just a bone to heal, right? More specifically with, Jackson, he's a wide receiver. What do you think he uses all the time, right? He's going to be using his wrists and his hands the entire time. So the chance for re-injury is really high for him, right? Because he could easily go out for, a pass, dives, lands on that same wrist, and re-injures again, and now he's out the entire season, right? So with him, more specifically, there are no reports to say which carpal bone was actually fractured or which one was screwed and fixated, but we do know that it did happen, right? There was, they call an elaborate surgery that actually occurred. And so more specifically, he did see a hand specialist for it. He waited a little while just to determine whether he actually needed the surgery itself or could he bypass the surgery and heal on its own. But when they want to bring him back earlier, you might as well just go in there and do a screw fixation.
Yeah.
But that doesn't bypass time and healing time, right?
Okay.
So for him, more specifically, there are a lot of different timelines out there. Pete Carroll says he could be back for week 1. I highly doubt that, right?
Okay.
I truly highly doubt that, more specifically for him. When you're looking at any type of, carpal bone fractures, whether it's the scaphoid or accoutrement, those are the two that are more specific to the wrist itself. You're talking anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks.
So what?
And
So people want to know. Break it down to us. Layman's term. People want to know, when is he coming back?
So I think anywhere between week 5 to week 6. Week 5 to week 6. More specifically for this individual. Now they can bring him back week 5. They try and put a wrist splint around it. Again, the biggest concern is he doesn't re-aggravate that wrist.
Week 5, week 6?
Week 5, week 6. And again, it really depends on, how much recovery has been made. Do they feel safe on bringing him back a little earlier than that? Again, with protective gear around it. But again, he's the wide receiver that's going to be using that hand all the time. So there's a lot of unpredictability upon that. And so again, the highest risk to a injury like that is that it happens again. And when it happens again, it's even more significant and more severe. And now you're having this individual gone for the entire season. And so I don't think, the Seahawks are going to go down that route, right? More specifically. So in this case, I'm pretty sure, like, if you're going to be, drafting Jackson, then you got to think to yourself, well, I'm drafting this guy not for the first half of the season, but for that back half of the season, right? And that back half of the season could be very important. More specifically, it's going to tip you over for the playoffs, right? Because if he does come back fully strong, specifically for those playoffs, then I think he's going to have then full recovery by then. And he's going to make a way bigger impact on your team than would be the first 5 weeks. So if you're going to want to be drafting this man, more specifically in the 7th to 8th rounds, well, you better have that contingency plan saying, you know what, I'm going to be drafting someone right in front of him so that I can fill that spot so that when he does come back, then I can see where he's at that point and see if he's actually going to make an impact on my roster in the back half of the season.
So we just saw Dalvin Cook go, 8th round. We haven't talked about Breece Hall, and we forgot to mention him. Just real quickly, we're going to come up on a pick here. Real quickly, what are you expecting from Breece Hall, like in the first few weeks of the season? When do you expect him to kind of be, revved up 100%, really sort of kind of near his peak or as good as he's going to be this year?
Yeah.
What have you seen thus far? Like, what are your thoughts on Breece Hall?
What's crazy to me is that seeing Breece Hall going like in the 3rd round in the drafts. That was crazy to me because when you have an ACL surgery, more specifically, a minor meniscus, element or injury too, it's going to take some time for you to ramp up. And, there are outliers, right? Adrian Peterson, right? Outlier, right? But we haven't heard any real setbacks from this individual. So I think in the first 5 weeks, you're going to start to see that he may be on a pitch count, and you may not know that, right? You may be on a rep count where you're going to be like, you know what? We brought in Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
We got Michael Carter. Why are we going to then be full force week 1, week 2, week 3 with this individual? So again, in the first 4 to 5 weeks, you're going to see, I think, that pitch count. And then by the halfway through the season, there are no setbacks. And I think they start to fully unleash them.
All right. So you're a pick away.
Yeah, we're seeing Michael Pittman really fall down boards, getting him at 809. He's definitely falls into that category, trap or value. I think he's a value personally, but could easily, understand the thought process that goes into that. I got some decisions to make up here, to be quite honest, on my end. I'm not sure where I'm going to go, if I'm being quite honest. I love how this draft is falling, though. I love being in a position where I feel like I have so many different options to choose from, and that's what's difficult. Is like, I got my queue loaded of guys who I was hoping to fall to me, and everybody's there.
So let's look at the queue.
So
well, not the queue, but let's look at who's available.
Yeah, so there are a couple guys here. At the top of the list is Elijah Moore for me. We have David Njoku. We have Sky Moore. I got the older guy in Keenan Allen. I got the older guy in James Conner. James Conner really isn't that old, but he's kind of on the aging team. So I love just getting Elijah Moore here. Like I think he's someone. I think the injury. I think people keep talking about him, but he's just like really like not rising up boards.
Right.
If he's getting a few touches here or there in the backfield, again.
The talent is there.
Yeah, the talent is there. We kind of pose the question of like, who's their third down back? Well, they don't have a true third down back or a guy they can go to in the flat that can really run routes and like get open, do something productive. Maybe it is Elijah Moore. Maybe it's Elijah Moore lining up in the backfield, running little outs and going up against linebackers. And he's got that with the receiving game. And they brought up a good point of him really sort of kind of only being in 3 wide receiver sets. But I don't mind that. Because I think 3 wide receiver sets, one is where they're mostly going to go out, running out of. But then also, usually when you're in 2 tight end sets, not always, you're usually running the ball or you're doing some type of play action pass. So, for me, I think, that's not a big issue for me as it is for everyone else.
Yeah, let's talk about that Antonio Gibson pick, 2 spots away from Brian Robinson. It seems like the fantasy community doesn't know what to do with this Commanders backfield. Who would you take first, Antonio Gibson or Brian Robinson, if you have to choose?
Man, I just avoid both of them, to be quite honest, unless I absolutely need to. I think they're both equally weighted.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Antonio Gibson is getting the third down work and is going to be splitting carries, even if he's only getting 30 to 70%, I think that's the guy that you want. And if Brian Robinson goes down, everyone's sort of kind of on Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily know that he takes away from Antonio Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
But if Antonio Gibson goes down, I don't necessarily know that Brian Robinson
starts to get third down work.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird situation. It's like, what's the real upside for any of these guys? To me, I just rather take a shot on an Elijah Moore or Sky Moore.
Yeah.
There, these guys may not pan out, but I just rather go that route than anything else.
All right.
So again, decisions.
Let's look who's available.
I'm going to Deshaun Watson here.
Okay.
I gave some consideration to a couple other guys.
He hasn't looked great though.
That's the thing. He's looked better than he did last year though.
That's true.
And I put it in the chat. But to me, Deshaun Watson is a rhythm player.
Mm-hmm.
You've ever seen the rhythm shooters?
Yeah.
Guys who are rhythm shooters. They just got to put up shots before they really start to kind of get comfortable, before they really start to kind of get in the groove. And I think that's what Deshaun Watson is. And if they're going to be running more shotgun, more 3 wide receiver sets at a higher pace, to me, that was the most noticeable thing. Again, just preseason. But I like and I've heard the idea of them running at a higher pace.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. He doesn't need to look good. I don't want him to look as bad as he did last year.
Yeah.
He just needs to be a little bit better than that. And you add in the rushing, it's just a safe floor.
Yeah.
To get that guy in the 9th round, because I think, all the talks that they haven't been looking good in camp has been dropping his ADP. Sometimes you got to be careful with that stuff. And his division is looking stronger than it ever has.
Yeah.
He's got to play Cincy.
Yeah.
And so
in Baltimore and Pickett looks better in Pittsburgh.
Exactly. And I got Jamar Chase, so that's 2 games a year where those 2 guys are going to go out.
Yeah.
And then obviously picking up Elijah Moore, so this is like a stack here.
Yeah.
To me, this is my stack.
Mm-hmm.
I don't got to pay the price for Amari Cooper, who I think is just appropriate at the very. I think he's just appropriate there. It's not like a great steal, but I think he's just appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to pair the Elijah Moore with the Deshaun Watson, I love that pick, and then it kind of just gives me the options kind of moving forward.
Yeah. Well, do you think that drafting Dalton Kincaid this early over Dawson Knox is kind of, I wouldn't call it a trap play, but is it appropriate? Do you think that Dawson Knox still has a role in this offense?
I haven't been able to click it. I understand the thought process behind, why people are on Kincaid as this sort of kind of boom pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think his role in the offense is very different than Dawson Knox. I think you almost really have to just view them, exclusively. I don't necessarily know that Kincaid is taking away from Knox. I think whatever Knox is going to get is what he's going to get. Yeah. And I think whatever Kincaid's going to get is what they specifically built into the offense for Kincaid.
Yeah.
And that aspect of things is what has me worried.
Mm-hmm.
Asking a rookie to come in,
a rookie tight end,
to learn all this, information and learn all these sub packages and feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he gets there at the end of the year, but even if he gets there at the end of the year, I guess maybe it's because I'm more so on Gabe Davis than most that I feel like, at the very best, he's going to be the 3rd receiving option.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that James Cook will even be above him, to be quite honest. So.
Yeah. It took Schultz at 9.
Yeah, so we're seeing a little run on tight end here. Sometimes I don't understand, why some guys, I guess, we're in the tight end premium. I think people get a little aggressive with getting tight end. Maybe I'm saying that because I don't have a tight end. But, I don't know. Sometimes, depending on who you drafted, you drafted Travis Kelce and then, you doubled up with Njoku. I guess it's good insurance. You just I think you would need to have some thought in the back of your mind that I'm a believer in Njoku and I feel like he could really show out. And that he could really be sort of kind of my second flex. And if you have that mindset, then I get it.
Yeah.
But if you're just kind of drafting just to sort of kind of get, your second port, tight end, because tight ends are sort of kind of going on a run, or you want to get ahead of it, or you see guys at a value. I think when I invest that much draft capital into Travis Kelce, I'm saying that you're healthy the entire year.
Yeah.
You're going to show up, you're going to give me 300 points, you're going to be the easy tight end one, so far and above the rest, and I'm going to fill off the rest. Because you are starting from behind at every other position when you do that, So I think, you got to play catch up. And then you also take Patrick Mahomes, which is obviously, what a lot of people like to do. because it was so successful last year.
Mhm.
So now you're starting behind from 2 positions. You got those other 2 positions sewed up, but you're trying to catch up to try and be elite or above average at those other positions. So taking that second tight end that early, I think you just gotta feel like you gotta feel very, very strongly about that player if you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start loading the queue here.
I'm not sure if I like his running backs either. I mean, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, like Antonio Gibson, like they all just make me feel uncomfortable. I feel just anxious just saying their names right now. Like they're aging backs.
Does Sam Howell bring in a little bit more value though? Does that entice you a little bit more to get like an Antonio Gibson?
That's a good question. I mean, I think having a running, mobile quarterback there, being maybe a little bit more athletic. I just don't know how much better he is than Taylor Heineke. Like I don't know how much better this offense is going to be. I don't. Those questions I don't know. He's looked decent, and by all reports, he's been pretty good. But that's a tough question to answer. I think if maybe if you're betting on that offense, maybe it works out. But you got to bet on that offense. You got to bet on that offense.
Well, it's good to be like maybe the masses may be thinking about that the same way too. You know what I mean? And if you do go that route, you do pick an Antonio Gibson, and it does pay off. Well, then you may be the only one that does think that way. If it does hit that way, then it's going to be in your favorable advantage to have that on your team, right? So, that's why I just got to think of like with Sam Howell. Like we do see that in the college that he was running quarterback. That's what he did, right? So
sounds like you may be looking at Sam Howell on Superflex coming up. You talking a little too much. We got the truth serum giving.
But I'm just saying that it just interjects on that commander's team, right? Like, it may give you just a little bit more value for Antonio Gibson. Like I don't think Brian Robinson, but I do think Antonio Gibson, right? Just because if it is you're looking for that PPR, then more specifically with Antonio Gibson, they may just use him as a gadget, right? With Jahan Dotson now, Scary Terry maybe be out just maybe 1 or 2 weeks. If that happens, then they lean on a little bit more with Antonio Gibson, right? It just, it just kind of opens the door a little bit. More specifically, if people are thinking that sort of way, like, no, I'm going to be put off by those 2 running backs. It's going to be, an RBBC, and you're not going to see too much of a bell cow roll in that sort of sense. But again, it may not, right? And so that's where I just kind of come in and say, okay, if I've got the draft capital coming in, like let's say around 9, and Antonio Gibson is there, I might take Antonio Gibson at that point. So.
Yeah. All right. So we got some context to that question from earlier.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to read it out now. He says, my home league is a 10-team half PPR with 2 flexes, so running backs are extremely valuable.
Correct.
All right. He says, I have the 10th pick and was wondering what you guys would do there. I don't think any receiver from Cup/Hill tier will fall. All right. So I think I'm going to take 2 running backs there that going at Barkley, Chubb, Henry range. Do you guys think that would be a great idea, or would it be better to take a receiver like Diggs and pair him with a running back? Also, who is your guys' favorite running back in the range I mentioned? Oh, no, he should take a receiver there.
Yeah, I think in a 10-team league, I want to get as many of those elite wide receivers as possible.
Yeah.
10-team league, I think this is going to be a plethora of running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And just, you got to hope to get lucky and hope to hit. You can take multiple running backs so that you do hit.
Yeah.
I think the difference between a Saquon Barkley and potentially your Rashad White may not be as massive as the difference between a Stephon Diggs and a Drake London.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got to kind of consider that. And if you start 3 wide receivers, even in a half-point PPR, I would still strongly be considering that.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea. I don't mind the idea of grabbing one versus the other. You know your league. The question is, if they go running back heavy, how early, how aggressive they get with running back.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're going to be left with just like, your first running back is a Rashad White, I think in that type of format, half-point PPR in a combined league, it's not really a setting where I really want to go 0 RB.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely don't mind at all grabbing Chubb and then grabbing, whoever your highest wide receiver is on the board, whether that's Diggs or Amon-Ra. I think in a half-point PPR, I would much rather Garrett Wilson, Stephon Diggs over Amon-Ra.
Yeah,
that's just me. And then even maybe AJ Brown, I would move him up as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely like the idea of Chubb there, like Chubb or Saquon, to be quite honest. But I probably would lean Chubb in the half point PPR format, but you can't go wrong with either. You don't need to go wrong with either. So my answer would be go ahead and split the difference, take both. 10 team league that you say skews heavy running backs being gone early. So ideally in the third round, you're still having quite elite options from a wide receiver standpoint, or close to elite options in a wide receiver standpoint, falling back to you.
Yeah, but I kind of want to take Diggs. Like Diggs is a top 5 receiver to me.
Yeah, you take Diggs.
I take Diggs over a lot of people who are going in that first round. So if he took Diggs
over Chubb,
yes, I'll take Diggs over Chubb all day.
And Bijan?
I wouldn't take Bijan in the second round personally, but I'm an outlier there. But I'm not taking Bijan in the second round. Like if he fell to me in the third round, which is not going to happen, right? But then I'd take him. But to take Diggs and then to take Garrett Wilson, like that's where I would go personally.
Yeah, and again, that kind of goes to the format. If I'm only starting 2 wide receivers and the other 2 flexes, can be, obviously running back, wide receiver, tight end, whatever. In that format, I think I probably would split the difference. I probably would get an elite running back. And if you feel like, if you just feel like you know your league and you can finesse your league and like get somebody like a Jalen Wall to fall back to you in the third round because of how aggressively people draft at certain positions, then maybe you do. Mims went.
Yeah.
I was trying to get up to 40% share on Mims.
Man, what do you think about Pollard? Pollard, no new running back options. Zeke is obviously in New England. Not a lot of running back options in Dallas right now. They didn't pick up anybody. They didn't bring in Dalvin, although Fournette is still out there. How do you guys feel about Pollard?
Love Pollard. Absolutely love Pollard.
Ever since coming back from that injury last year, suffering that ankle fracture, ankle sprain, he had a very similar surgical technique such as Cooper Cup. It's called a tightrope procedure. And there's a lot of success rates coming back from that type of procedure itself. He's had ample time to recover. We saw nothing but great things coming out of his practice itself. More specifically, his progression through practice, and he's continued to make more progress in practice. And so, like you said, there's nobody really around him that's going to kind of take away from his volume specifically. And what I was concerned about is that if they do bring back Zeke, they're going to take away that that touchdown, right? It's going to be that touchdown vulture. But now in this case, I think they leave him in all 3 downs. Even in that 4th and 1, they still put him in there, correct?
I don't see it.
Unless they bring up Rico Dotto in that range, but I think there is specifically in this offense, like we're seeing now, and more specifically with the Cowboys, is that McCarthy is trying to figure out a way where he wants to let Dak to kind of run it on the field, right? Yeah. He wants to kind of come off a little bit. Not that he wants to call every single play, but let the play kind of come to him and Dak at the same time. If Pollard's on the field, they're going to be like, let's keep going, and they're just not going to leave him. They're going to leave him in there.
Love this Juwan Johnson pick, by the way. So you went Juwan Johnson with his 10th pick.
I like that.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. He's just been a guy who's been like very, very high on. I think my heart was broken when they started bringing in other guys. But then I just realized, like, you know what? This dude's a beast. Like, if you just watched him play last year, you watched him in the catches, and specifically, you watched him in the red zone. Yeah. And then you start to think about, and not necessarily going to be the same, but you start to think about what Carr's done with tight ends in the past. And then just his offense in general, how they treated the tight end. And then all I needed to hear was like all the love he's been getting in camp. Yeah. And that's just been kind of coming out recently. And I think the board is like not kind of caught up to that. Yeah. It's been something that, like, honestly, I feel very, very good with the amount of shares of Juwan Johnson that I had, and feel very good in terms of just sort of kind of leaving him there.
You've been beating the drum for a while.
It's funny because like 2 years ago, remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years. 2 years ago, we were in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I started him week 1. This is when like nobody knew who Juwan Johnson was.
We were going nuts.
And he scored 2 touchdowns. I was nuts. I forget where we were. We were like, people were looking around. We were in one of the sports books. I was on a whole nother level. It scored 2 touchdowns. This dude came out of nowhere. The guy who I was playing was just like, who is Juwan? All right.
Tight end sleepers over here. Tight end sleepers.
Yeah, this next pick, we just going for the moon here with this next pick. And actually, man, how much time I got? 19 seconds. So it's between this guy and another guy that's really kind of giving me pause. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go with my boy Chig. I was considering another guy here, but they is gonna be upset with me. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. They is gonna be upset. They is not gonna like that pick. He probably gonna. If he's watching, he's gonna send me a text.
So
yeah.
Another story on Chig, he's coming back from an MCL sprain too.
Yeah, you're supposed to tell me this before I hit the draft.
And so, he might, he's making a push for week 1, but he suffered this in the preseason. Low grade MCL sprain. So did Kyle Phillips in that same game as well. But again, there was no reports of him having any greater damage inside that knee.
Yeah.
And so, I could see why Jake has been kind of falling off the drafts a little bit, more specifically off radars. But I anticipate him being ready for week 1. He's coming back. I mean, he's making full reports. When a great one, MCL sprains, could take anywhere between 3 or 4 weeks, 3 to 5 weeks, somewhere around there. Happened earlier in the preseason, so he's got ample time to come back. And there's been reports of him feeling a lot better now. So again, with Jake, I have no regards or remorse on him for sure, because I've seen him drop. I've definitely seen him drop in board specifically with just kind of his ADP due to that MCL sprain. But not too many people knew about what grade or what grade level and how severe it was. So I have there's no concern for me.
If I'm about to click on the player.
It's a future reference.
I know who you going there.
You go ahead and look at the queue. You go ahead and give me one of those. Nah, not that one. Nah, don't do that. We can talk about the Tennessee Titans offense in the group chat. I don't know that we've actually really truly hashed it out on the pod recently. We definitely need to. They have a new OC, someone that they brought up, Kelly, who used to be with the Texans. And there have been talks about them opening up the offense and specifically going back to that same term or that same thought process of faster pace. And that's really what I like to hear as well. So a little bit more passing, a little more faster pace. It's obviously still going to go through Derrick Henry. If it was not, they would have traded him a long time ago. But if it's a faster pace type offense and they're going to be passing a little bit more, and I'm going to get your take on Treylon Burks here very soon.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking at the number 2 receiving option. Kyle Phillips is out, and that dude can't stay healthy.
Right.
So then you got an old DeAndre Hopkins who really is hard to separate.
Yep.
Tig to me, especially early on, could be really set up to be the second option in the offense that's going to pass a little bit more.
For sure.
And be, sort of kind of someone who can be looked at in the red zone. He's not the biggest tight end, but he's definitely obviously very, very athletic. So talk about Burks.
Yeah, Burks, more like a grade 1 LCL sprain.
Okay.
And so that's just on the outside, one of the ligaments on the outside of the knee. Unfortunately, he did it on one of the practices, going for a touchdown, as a matter of fact. And so that causes, some stress over. And I would suspect that he had a little, we call bone contusion or bone bruise too. And so that takes us a little while. When you're looking at LCL sprains, you're looking anywhere between about 4 to 6 weeks to return, more specifically, so that they can get back to practice and all those, return to sport activities. And so he could actually miss the first couple of weeks of the season. So, that might be missing, week 1, week 2, and then they slowly wrap him up. Again, what the main concern is that it doesn't get any worse, right?
Yeah.
We don't want that grade, that instability to happen throughout the entire season. So they want to make sure that knee is fully stable. They want to make sure that he's fully ready, and then they're going to start to slowly bring him out, right? So what I always do, and more specifically when you're looking at players coming back right from these injuries, is what is their practice level like? And so if you're not looking at Twitter, if you're not looking at these resources to determine what they're doing in practice, that's a telling sign of what is actually going to happen during game time, right? Because if they start to ramp up during practice and they have that full practice, right, and they're actually going through full practice, they're not limited in such a way, then that's going to correlate to what's going to happen in the game itself. They might not be ready to bring them back in that next game, but as soon as you start seeing full practice in 2 to 3 days, full practice, then you can really be more confident that, coming that next game next week, he's going to be, unleashed, or they're going to be, with no limitations, essentially at that point.
Boy, look at that Dak disrespect there.
Well, disrespect. I mean, this is the Lamar owner who took that. I'm kind of upset because I wanted to take one of those guys. And I considered that was like the hard decision I was having. Do I shore up a tight end, or do I go ahead and get kind of insurance at the quarterback position? Because obviously, we're not putting Watson in the Mahomes Hurts category, but I would put him in, but I also put Lamar in that Hurts Allen Mahomes category. So I think, I don't know, the Prescott pick, I guess maybe if you're worried a little bit about the injury risk for Lamar, you just kind of want some insurance there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be spite and anger and hate that he took a guy that I was going to take. But
MVP Daniel Jones going all the way in the 11th round.
I know. I'm upset. See, and when I, in my mind, when I was taking Deshaun Watson there, I did so with the idea, because if I take Daniel Jones, I'm usually taking two quarterbacks.
Yep.
I'm a Daniel Jones truther, but still, I need you to show me something. So I usually will double Daniel Jones with someone. But if I do that, knowing what ADP is currently, if I do that, what that means is that I got to take him 10, and then I got to take somebody at 11.
Yeah.
Which means that I would have, my ninth round would have just been one tight end in Njoku. And I would much rather have Watson, Johnson, and Chig versus Njoku, Daniel Jones, and Dak Prescott, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No.
So and I played that scenario out kind of in my head because I just knew based off of using Fantasy Mojo, shout out to Fantasy Mojo, his ADP rankings. Knowing what the ADP is, I had to kind of make sure that I get my guys. So I don't mind taking them early if I need to take them early, but there are other guys that I want too, so I want to try to get as many of my guys as possible.
Well, consider you already have Elijah Moore too, right? So there's three guys on one team. That kind of takes away from the value itself, right? Because who's going to get the ball, right?
And it's hard to get Njoku and Watson and Elijah Moore because their ADPs are just so close together.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get all three of those in the same spot. So we just saw Luke Musgrave go. He was a guy that I was definitely looking at. So
Now you are on the clock.
we just saw Kirk Cousins go. I definitely had him in the queue. I don't understand the Patrick Mahomes. I don't understand the Patrick Mahomes pick there. Let's see here. So talk to me about Jeff Wilson. And you got 20 seconds to tell me of Jeff Wilson here.
I think Jeff Wilson, again, not coming back from, true injury, itself, more specifically, just wrapping up the activity. It's just that you haven't seen him, right? Yeah. There's no reports of him being in any type of preseason. Okay. So that's why I think you continue to see him drop, right? Raheem Mostert. Everybody thinks that Raheem Mostert is going to be the starting back on that team. I honestly think Jeff Wilson's going to be the starting back on that team. With sprinkle of, A-Chain and Raheem Mostert. We haven't seen that Mostert, gets injured often, right?
You showed me, I don't know.
Especially at that rate, right? Yeah. 12th round. This is what I've seen more specifically with these running backs from Miami, right? There's no clarity, right? Yeah. There's no clarity on who's actually going to be, getting the ball there, right? Yeah. But it's going to be hard for me to say that there's no value with Jeff Wilson on the board. We saw it last year when he came to the Miami. They used him immediately, right? He was able to, rise up to the occasion pretty quickly, and more specifically with the likes of Raheem Mostert. They know Raheem Mostert is almost like a Ferrari, right? Yeah. You run him, and something's gonna break, and then shut him down.
It's a tough backfield for sure to handcuff. Because honestly, I think 1 week it could be somebody, and another week it could be somebody completely different. It's just gonna be a guessing game.
Yeah, but the talent is what Mostert to me. Mostert is a better talent than Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, Mostert's he's 32. How old is Mostert?
I mean, he's longer than two.
He's old.
Yeah, but Jeff Wilson is not a spring chicken, so.
Right.
Yeah, I don't feel good about that thing.
Maybe the talent level is a little, higher, but again, I just think the durability.
Yeah, I don't feel too good about that pick. I'm not gonna lie, I think I would have gone Kirk Cousins there, which is okay.
What's the highest you've ever taken a defense?
I maybe have dabbed 12th round. I don't 13th for sure, because I've taken a lot of Philly defense. I feel really good about my team. If Philly fell here, I would have taken Philly over Jeff Wilson.
Why?
Because just in the off chance that they are just a truly elite defense. They got the players. The question is whether or not they gel together. I'm biased because I did this with Patriots, and I like loaded up on Patriots defense, and that year they absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
And it was like the difference maker.
Yeah.
It was a true difference maker. So you don't know. You don't know week to week. And I think there are very, very there just aren't a lot of truly elite defenses out there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But at 12?
I mean, look who they took them around now. I mean, you could go some like backup RBs, you can go Joe Flip. I mean, none of these guys are like guys that like you feel good about. I don't feel excited about any of these guys. Like right now, with as much information as we got, like preseason's done. We got all the information that we're probably gonna get. We got some cuts that are coming down. Maybe there are a few trades here and there. But the boards are tight now. Like the boards are tight. Now, you got Zeke Elliott going in the 11th round.
Yeah.
Right? You got Kenneth Gainwell going in the 11th round. These guys are going in the 16th, 17th, 18th round early on. Things are tight now. So, I don't feel like we have to reach. Like if you found like a position where you're just like, okay,
you're on the clock, man. Like whenever you go into these long tirades when you're on the clock, you make me nervous. All right.
I mean, when I'm drafting with y'all, it's a little bit different.
Right.
It's about myself. I got this. I got to about that Kendrick Miller pick.
Yeah,
it's not there.
Yeah, the Kendrick Miller pick is. I've never been a Jamal Williams fan. I get that he's like a coach favorite. He'll probably, be the starter to start off.
And a fan favorite too.
Yeah, and maybe he holds that specific position the entire year. But I do feel like Kendrick Miller is the more athletic back. I considered Jonathan Mingo there, but I'm very happy with the wide receivers that I have. So at that stage, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and bet on talent. And I do have Alvin Kamara, so maybe it's a bit of a hedge as well. So you talent player on the board.
So you said something there that is strategy specific. If you get the receivers that you are targeting that you feel comfortable with, will you just hammer every other position and just kind of let those receivers sit, or will you still kind of take stabs at some receivers later on down the board?
Yeah, so for me, like, there's a position in the draft that there was between rounds 9 through 12, and earlier it was almost like rounds 9 through 13, where the receivers that were going in that range, I just wanted nothing to do with. I had zero interest. And the receivers that were going afterwards, I absolutely loved. That's why I have like close to like 40% in FFPC, Fantasy Pros, man, 40% of like Marvin Mims, because he was just going so late.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love Marvin Mims. I'll throw another name out there, hopefully they get taken. But Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
I'm not even a Van Jefferson fan, but just knowing the opportunity that he has potentially in that offense, again, another Cooper Cup edge, like to me, like that's a guy that just like could be thrusted into an opportunity where he has to be the guy and he's seeing, 8, 9, maybe 10 targets a game out of necessity.
Yeah.
And that defense, I think, is not going to be very good. So I think they are going to have to throw.
Yeah.
So that's another guy. Jonathan Mingo is somebody I've kind of been on recently. Bateman was a guy who was going in like the 11th, 12th round. So that was like the one guy in that range that I would reach up for. But there are a lot of other guys that I just prefer later. So I just wait. This whole range, I love when all these wide receivers go. Because a lot of these guys are guys that are tough to start, and they're really going to be hard to know when you're going to put in your lineup. And I just don't like having guys like that on my team. So I'm going to go for a guy that, in the right situation, could potentially be a league winner. And that was Marvin Mims. This is before the Jerry Jeudy injury. New coach, first player drafted. I thought his talent level was above what he was being touted on. Yeah. His high score rate could speak for itself, but I thought at Oklahoma they just used him as a deep threat, and I thought his game was just so much more extensive than that. Yeah. So I really saw him as a guy that later in the season could truly be a difference maker. But some of the other guys like Alan Lazard, I just had zero interest in.
That's where I kind of feel about Bateman. The last 2 years you see, a lot of significant injuries happen, right? And he's actually come out and said, these last 2 years have been a humbling experience because he never really, experienced something like that before. And so, kind of like that Marvin Mims, I think Rashawn Bateman has that same potential more specifically, because I've been seeing him go into like the 11th round, right? And you pick up Bateman, more specifically coming off, Ellis Frank surgery, right? That puts people off, right? It puts people off. Doesn't really put people on their radar, saying that he's not going to be truly, back to his full potential. But he did have his heart rhythm move. He did have a cortisone injection. That's part of the process, right? And then he's actually said that he actually feels about 99% healthy now.
Yeah.
And so that makes me feel energetic about that pick, right?
Yeah.
Because in that offense, we already know that offense is going to change. We know that there is going to be more passes being thrown in that offense. And I think Rashad Bateman could be one of those top ones. More specifically, receiving that benefit of people really kind of writing him off, saying that he's not going to come back to what he like the previous injury. But it's people like him where I think they can really bring more value to your team at those later rounds, like a Marvin Mims themselves.
So we're loading up the queue right now, the 13th round. I know you want to give like a recap for the listeners, for people who are only listening later on, later date.
All right. Let's go back through. Let's see. Just your team, or you want me to go through?
I mean, you can just like anything that you feel like is relevant. You can get my team. I think maybe start off with my team, so people can understand like the thought process of some of the recent picks that we've made and where we're sitting.
Yeah, unfortunately, he started with Jamar Chase with the first pick, and then he backdoored that with another bad pick of Josh Jacobs. He did take my guy Keenan Allen in the third round. And then he Christian Watson, that's a good value on Christian Watson in the fourth round. Rashad White is his, receiver 2, presumably. And then he backdoored that with Alvin Kamara. And then John Connor.
James Conner.
I like calling him John Connor. Because they did that
John
commercial with
Connor.
him against the Terminator. So I like calling him John Connor. And then Elijah Moore. His quarterback is going to be Deshaun Watson. And then I like my guy, Juwan Johnson, Okonkwo. We got some Jeff Wilson and then Kendre Miller. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I want to go back through this first round for a second. We're getting kind of deep. I want to slide back up for those who didn't start from the beginning. Let's go back through this first round. I'm sorry, man. Like I just can't do. I don't mind Nick Chubb, but I don't like him in the first round. I like him like early second, and I kind of roll the dice on him to see if I can get him. Now, granted, I would take Garrett Wilson in the first round. So, I mean, whether you take him in the first or second, like I would take Garrett Wilson in the first round and then take Nick Chubb in the second round where he took Garrett Wilson. So, I think that kind of balances out. But going back through these first few rounds, anything shocking, anything that you guys see that seemed like kind of out of the norm that you would have done differently? Chris Olave seems to be moving up a little bit. I'm not sure if I like him. Well, to be honest, I kind of like Chris Olave as much as I like Devontae Smith or T. Higgins, but I would take none of them at that position, right? Like I just don't like them that early in the second. How do you guys like the first part of this draft so far?
I think it just kind of fell how it typically falls, to be quite honest. I took Josh Jacobs, having the certainty of him being in camp definitely helps. But Garrett Wilson at 2.2, maybe it's a slight bump. Full disclosure, I took him at like 108 the other night.
You took who 108?
Garrett Wilson.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to get a share. And again, I think that background is for the most part just is what it is. Like I think all those guys are kind of the same. And if I end up with any of them, I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a little bit lower on some guy, or I just want to like be higher on a certain guy, I'll just reach up and grab him, a little bit earlier. The Olave, Smith, Waddle territory is always tough. It's kind of like dealer's choice, player preference. Andrews goes somewhere in there. So I think the first two rounds, to me, fell kind of how they typically fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people might be set up by Waddle itself in the second round too. Maybe see him going down a little bit later because there's body's injuries, abdominal injury itself, but more specifically when you're looking at his abdominal injuries, that can take about 4 weeks to recover. So I think he's making a big push for week 1. So I don't think there's concern for him not being able to be ready for week 1. More specifically, as McDown was saying that he's making really good progress, progressing well, and they're just going to get him ready for week 1. So they don't want to really have any setbacks as they're coming back and playing preseason because that's not what they want to do. So I think for me, I think Waddle over Olave, more specifically because of how dynamic he is.
Yeah.
I love that offense itself, more specifically with Tua, throwing the ball to him over Olave because, you have Derek Carr, you have Michael Thomas, and you have and Juwan Johnson, but Derek Carr is not a Tua to me, right? And I think that Tua's and McDaniel's offensive scheme is far more superior to me, and what Waddle brings in that talent level, if you're putting 1-to-1 with Olave, again, I think Waddle is in a better situation. So I think I would pick more Waddle over Olave in that sense. Because if you go Cup and then Waddle just blows up, I mean, that's a huge winner for you right there.
Yeah. For all of y'all who are thinking how early I should draft a kicker, apparently AB likes Justin Tucker so much that he consistently drafts him as early as the 14th round. Because we thought about this on one of our episodes when we drafted you and Justin Tucker, man. I just can't take a kicker that early. I'm sorry. I just can't
Part
do
of
it.
this is just because the headache of ad drops is his week 5 or his bye week is week 13.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the kicker position until week 13. I like this team. I like the setup. I have kind of a plan. I have a lot of guys who I just have in my queue. And I was like, you know what? Why not let me get probably, in all likelihood, a top 5 kicker and just win at that position, even if it's a couple points.
Mm-hmm.
If you played FFPC or any of these tournament leagues where rankings, seeding is decided by points, and you ever miss out by a point or two, this is why you take a kicker in the 14th round sometimes. And he's really the only kicker that I will ever reach for. Maybe occasionally, I'll go for a KC kicker in the 17th round, but other than that, I typically don't, I don't go for it. So there's just a couple of guys who I for sure want, and I don't care about ADP. So we're just going to go after these guys right now. And we're just going to kind of see some randomness likely ensuing here. These are guys that I just don't want to miss on. News drop. Sometimes news drops on the weekend and people don't hear about it, and then it makes its round during the weekday and catches wildfire. Nothing's been confirmed for sure, but I think there's some talks out of camp that it's pretty much all but confirmed that Rico Dowdle is the RB2, or at least in the committee. And I've kind of felt this way. I get the Deuce Vaughn allure as far as kind of how he's looked in camp, and
just too small.
but yeah, I just when I think about like how big he is and pass protection and what they want from like somebody who can kind of take care of y'all, Tony Pollard, or Tony Pollard goes down, somebody who can really get those carries. I think Rico Dowdle.
Yeah.
And I'll keep going back to it. I do think that this is going to be a pass offense.
Yeah.
I really did want and hope Dak would have fell to me, and I could have had like Watson with Dak. Like I love that. Love that, but. It is what it is.
Yeah, so let's talk about like get your guy like rankings, right? Like when do you start to say, all right, like ADP be there, I'm gonna get my guys like at this point? Like what round do you start to change your mindset about caring about ADP?
Yeah. Side. One last thing. See the kicker run that I started?
Yep.
now that pushes things back to me. Sometimes you get lucky and you start a little run.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like things fall to you. Like, you love it. You love it. Get your guys. Get your guy rounds are like all rounds. They're all rounds. I just talked to you about like I wanted Garrett Wilson, so I went up and got him at 108. I think get your guy within reason, like and when you get your guy, you gotta like understand your personal biases. Like I want Garrett Wilson, and I'm like, and I like Garrett Wilson a lot. I will not lie. The preseason has changed my mind, and just like everything that I've seen, and then seeing Rodgers out there with him, I don't care how good that offense is. I just feel like that Rodgers is going to do what he's done for like the last decade plus.
Yeah.
Go to his number one guy.
Yeah.
So, shame on me that it took me that long to realize that. I wish I would have just had Garrett Wilson a lot higher, so I would have much more. But I'm not going to harp on what I was thinking before, and I'm going to auto-correct it. So, that was a get my guy situation. But I'm in this draft at 102. Just because I want to get more shares of Garrett Wilson, I'm not going to take him over Chase.
Yeah.
I'm not taking him over Tyreek Hill. So it's kind of like, your rankings, how you have guys situated, who you think is better, who you think is going to score more points, roster constructions and things like that. So, get your guy within reason. I'm not reaching over guys that I think, I'm not taking Rico Dowdle there because I think he is like my guy, and so I'm going to take him over like a, you know, I'm not going to take him over Tajay Spears, you know. I'm going to wait. But then like once like my guys start to kind of run out, now in this situation, again, ADP is especially irrelevant. So now it's just kind of ranking the guys that I for sure want on my team. And this is the thing about ADP. ADP is what ADP is. It's all retrospective. News comes out. So if you look at ADP, like Kyron Williams just went. Josh Kelly just went. Evan Cole just went. And we're still in the 15th round.
Yeah.
Sam Howell just went. Brock Purdy just went. How many, you know, if you were drafted a week ago, 2 weeks ago, these guys were not going off the board.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one that's just getting my guy. Like, this is why it's like, it's sometimes if you wait based on ADP, then like you build a team that you don't like.
Yeah.
At the end of this draft, I can guarantee you, like, it doesn't matter what happens from here on out. I love this team.
Yeah.
I felt like I had an idea of what I wanted to accomplish, players that I wanted, and I got that. I'm never gonna be able to get all my guys because you only have 20 spots.
So, quick question from my guy, Draft Hustle TV. I love his Mario Kart. I'm addicted to them. He has a question. He says, if FFPC were to make a format change, would you rather it be adding a third flex starter or a third receiver starter?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm game for anything. I think I would say a third wide receiver position, just given where the game is. I think if you're going to make changes, make changes that, you know, parallel the changes that have been made in the game itself.
And that's that receiver.
And that's that receiver position.
So the wide receiver pool is just
absolutely. So that's what I would be looking at. That's a great question. And we talked about Superflex, or at least I mentioned it on, maybe it's a different pod. But I think all leagues should really be looking at, you know, if you're in a competitive league, you should really be looking at changing the format to Superflex to really sort of kind of level out the playing field. Because to me, like, that really just like adds a whole lot, another element and a whole level of different strategy.
Right.
You know, like, you can do anything, you know, kind of, you know, construct any team you want, but you have to like really take in account a lot.
Because then all your entire draft board changes, right? Everything you're seeing right now it automatically changes when now the most valuable person on your draft is your quarterback, right? Because you can have the lowest quarterback, even at his lowest game, can put you better than the guy that just, you know, is one of your top wide receivers or top running backs, even at his lowest game, right? And so that just changes everything. And going back to kind of get your guy season, like, the only reason why I like looking at ADP is because then I might start looking at what is everybody else doing, right? Like, what is everybody else looking at right now? And more specifically, how does that line up to the guys that I have value, right? What are my value picks, right? Because, like he said, like, if I'm going to wait and pick a Rico Dowdle, well, obviously I'm going to go pick him up at round 11, round 12, because he's not going at that spot. But he's my guy, right? So I'm going to go grab him later on because he's not on everybody else's mind. Marvin Mims, that's a bigger one, right? Because Marvin Mims has slowly just continued to climb. Now with the Jerry Jeudy news, even more so, right? Because what happens? They start beating that drum, and then you just start seeing more ADPs. More people looking at those ADPs, and they start bringing them up higher and higher and higher. So that's where I utilize more of the ADP. And I think, like you said, ADP is very retrospective. In the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, that changes, right? That changes altogether, and you got to be willing to be like, okay, like, what was my thinking at that point, right? We'll have to go back and reevaluate and say, okay, why did I think like that? Why did I feel like this guy was higher than this guy when this guy's smashing now versus the guy that I got, right? So it gives me a lot of opportunity for me to evaluate.
It was interesting to see Zamir White not just like completely free fall, but still like the free fall way past like a lot of just the other handcuffs. He's still a handcuff. Like, I know people were like taking him with the idea that like, okay, maybe Josh Jacobs doesn't show up, but, you know, given like where all the other handcuffs are gone, I think like it's just kind of this like the human psyche of things. He's still a handcuff, but like now we're taking him way after all the other handcuffs. Which is just interesting to me. Just very, very interesting to me.
It's always been kind of interesting to me to look at Tyler Conklin. He's in an offense that has, a guy, right, with Garrett Wilson. But at the same time, like, he's with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers likes to throw to his tight ends because he's a safe quarterback, and like him and Uzoma like are just not being drafted like above what round like 14, 15 at best. And that's just interesting to me, considering that Corey Davis retires. They really only have Garrett Wilson. I'm not buying Cobb, by the way.
Well, I just think part of it too is just like you haven't seen it, right? It's oftentimes people have to see it to believe it. You know?
Yeah, but Garrett Wilson is the only receiving option that's being drafted. Who did you take here? Oh, Justin Ross. You and Justin Ross, man.
It's like these around, but like I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, like who could really be a difference maker?
Yeah,
And like,
but you can't.
are they in a situation where they could just like Debo people that are in front of them? You get Debo people that's in front of them.
He's not. Come on, like you need to get off this narcotics. You need to get off this narcotics.
Why is he not? Is he not as talented?
There's no evidence
Is he
that.
not as talented? Is he not as talented?
No, I don't think he's.
You don't think he's as talented as Mark? You don't think he's more talented than MVS?
No, you chose MVS. Is
But
he
MVS
more
is the
talented?
starter. MVS is the starter. Is he more talented than MVS?
He's about as talented as he
Is he more talented than Justin Watson? The other potential starting wide receiver and 3 wide receivers.
No.
Is he more talented than Sky Moore? He's
No.
more talented than all
He's
of
not.
those guys.
He's not.
Oh my God.
He's not more talented than
Stop
Sky Moore.
Stop it.
He's not more talented than Kadarius Stoney.
He really is though. He really
He's
is.
not.
I've never
He
seen
really is. He's just been hurt.
I've
That's
never
it.
seen anybody out in the KC offense other than Tyreek Hill for them to target one guy.
They've done it in the past. They've been wide receivers. They just had that low where there just hasn't been like a wide receiver that just hadn't been gifted. Again, targets are earned. Like KC is like the perfect.
He's an injured McCole Hart. That's what he
the
is.
Kansas City Chiefs are the perfect talking point for where they talk about targets are earned, not given. Like that is a perfect talking point for that. Targets are earned, not given.
That's just how Reed goes.
Yeah, that's how Reed goes.
And thank you, Dave Gladstone. Thank you. James Ritchie is who you'll be dropping Ross for in the first waiver round.
So
let me ask you.
You're right.
Okay, so
He's right. Like James Ritchie.
So let me ask you about Ritchie. What position? Like what type of wide receiver position does he play?
Slot.
Okay, so what type of wide receiver position does Scott Moore play?
Another slot.
Okay, so that's my point with Ritchie. That's why I'm not on Ritchie.
But you don't.
Ritchie's not gonna be fighting guys off to like play the X position or play the Z position or play the outside wide receiver position. I'm not worried about Ritchie from that standpoint. Ritchie may take some Sky Moore snaps, okay, or maybe if they like find themselves in like 4 wide receiver, yeah, maybe he's on the field. But what I'm looking at is that 3 wide receiver base, okay. Richie James plays slot, so he would be taking away from Scott Moore or Sky Moore. To me, him and Justin Ross are 2 very different positions.
But you don't see. All right.
I just my argument for Justin Ross is not based on anything that has happened in the offseason.
It's not based on fact.
No, it is based on facts.
What?
Because my argument for Justin Ross is go see what he did in college before he got injured.
Oh,
You could say all, but go see what he did in college before he got injured. And everything that I've seen in preseason, even though it's been limited, to me shows that he is the best wide receiver on that team.
Okay. All right.
It really does.
All right.
Really does.
So you're saying, hey, like, go look at a guy's college tape, and that tells me that he's going to be the best receiver on an NFL team. Come on, man. Come on.
You can't show me one clip of any of the other wide receivers on that team, and then show me Justin Ross clips. Why he's been with the Chiefs, and prove to me that any of those other wide receivers are better than Justin Ross. I guarantee you can't do it.
I can show you those other receivers having success in the NFL, but I can't show you Justin Ross.
He was hurt last year. That was his rookie year.
All right.
Last
Well,
year.
then
Sky
why
Moore,
so
Sky
much
Moore
faith
wasn't
in a
hurt.
guy
So
who
Sky Moore wasn't hurt last year. And what did he do?
he was a rookie?
He wasn't hurt.
All
Justin Ross was a rookie last year, and he was hurt. So you can't make the argument that they haven't done anything. Look what Scott.
So the lack of evidence is going to wait.
Sky Moore is being drafted the highest, and he hasn't done anything in the NFL.
All right.
So that argument holds no weight there.
All right. So the fact that we have film on Sky Moore, and we still don't have film on Justin Ross, put you puts Justin Ross ahead of Sky Moore? Would you say that like
No,
an
I'm
unknown?
saying, look, I'm saying this is a subject that matters. So we're not gonna be able to solve this argument.
Right.
What I'm saying is that based on the eye test, Justin Ross is the best wide receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's not even close to me. Like it's not even close. I've seen all of them play. It is not even close. Based on the eye test, Justin Ross is the best wide receiver on my team.
Based on the eye test, to me, Kadarius Toney is the best receiver. But if you're saying that, hey, Justin Ross is not going to be a slot receiver, he's going to be like an every down receiver that essentially Kadarius Toney is not going to take away targets or snaps from him, that's fine. I just don't see it. Like I just don't see how you get there.
It's eye test. My eyeballs look at the scheme. They watch the game, and I say, "Damn, that dude is a beast." And then I watch the other guys, and I'm like, "Eh." Like I watch Sky Moore, and I'm like, "Eh." Nobody's putting out Sky Moore highlights. When was the last time you saw a Sky Moore highlight clip?
I haven't seen
What is Sky Moore? You've seen them all the time. They've been all throughout the offseason.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it.
You know, Justin Ross has come back from some significant surgeries.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So again,
tell us, Los. Tell us, like, tell us.
816 right there.
He's had cervical spinal fusion, right? So
That was a big thing. That's what kept him out. Like that's why he went undrafted.
Isn't that the thing that made Peyton Manning retire?
Yeah, a lot of people retire after something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Peter
and
Shaw, okay.
then he came back and then he had a foot surgery.
Yeah.
Right, last year, which put him on the injured reserve for the Chiefs, right?
But
so,
he's the guy.
I get it's
You know what, though?
here, right? It's
I want to give a shout
and
out.
do I want it to do well? Absolutely. You know,
Mhm.
I want these guys, specifically with these guys that coming back from traumatic injuries.
I want
them to do well. You know, but again, those are just kind of red flags to me.
Yeah.
I want
It
to
takes
give
one hit, you know, to put you up like that.
I want to give a shout out to Team 12.
Now
Mhm.
you are on the clock.
Team 12 is out here. Daniel Jones naked.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have one quarterback. Daniel Jones.
MVP.
Man,
MVP.
I love it.
Daniel Jones.
I love it. I love it. I need to find out who,
Yes,
who
sir.
that guy is. Like, I did not think there was anybody who loved Daniel Jones more than we love him.
Right. You on the clock? Michael Wilson?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield.
No, man. Daniel Jones is an MVP candidate.
The
I'm
thing
telling
is,
you.
he played the board very well.
Yep.
Like, usually in the main events, people aren't taking more than 2 wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw one team, I think, take 3. But usually most teams aren't taking 2 wide receivers. So, like, picks like Howe and Purdy, you just don't anticipate those picks. But there's still Russell Wilson that's on the board. And I'm not a Russell Wilson fan. I don't think I have any shares, maybe one, like less, 1%. But there's David Carr. So, like, if he wants a second quarterback just to kind of hold down the fort just in case, like, he can get a second quarterback, available to him. So, I think he plays this very well. I think,
Daniel Jones.
if you just go with the mindset, you know what, I want to just like smash all these other positions. I want to try to like really maximize, every single draft slot that I have to build this monster of a team that I can build. Like his team to me is pretty strong.
Yeah.
If Daniel Jones hits. So
All right.
we saw Russell Wilson go. This is the guy that I've been had in queue with the idea that I'm going to draft. This will be like my first share.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of backstory. I think it was, I want to say maybe April.
Mm-hmm.
I put a question out in the group chat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a 750 Superflex FFPC league with a lot of sharks.
Okay.
A lot of sharks. And I was like, man, who would y'all rather have?
Yep.
Tua or this player?
Yep.
And I think most of y'all said this player.
I like him.
And I was like, this is risky.
I like him.
Maybe it wasn't a smart trade because of the value, but I traded Tua straight up.
Man, tell us who it is. Who is it? Who is it?
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. All right.
Jordan Love. Yeah.
All right.
I traded. Yeah, that was a dynasty Superflex. I traded Tua straight up for Jordan Love. Again, at the time, it probably was a bad trade because I probably could have got more straight up. But looking at it now, like, I'm kind of glad that
I remember that.
Yeah,
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
This is why I put Jordan Love over Tua, right? Tua, how many concussions did he have last year? Right?
Yeah.
how much is it going to take to just put him out 5 games this year?
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Take one, right?
Yeah.
Does Tua run? No, Tua does not run. Does Jordan Love run? Yes, he does.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so those 2 factors alone already is already putting me in that category. And I love that a lot of people are on him.
Yeah.
So don't be taking that information. But you can see that reason, in those next leagues is that they're taking Anthony Richardson at, round 4, round 5, and Jordan Love is coming down like round 10, round 9.
Now, he doesn't run as much as Anthony Richardson, but that was actually what kind of like led me to
the potential.
He can run a little bit, and you saw a little bit of RPO, you saw a little bit of running in the preseason. If he could just give me like 20 yards per game, 30 yards per game,
50 yards.
That's asking a lot.
I mean,
That's asking a lot.
But
I think he's going to carry more on his back. I think he feels that in that offense, more specifically coming in the footsteps of Aaron Rodgers, right? The expectation is high for him.
Yeah.
And
I think he's going to try and live up to that expectation. He's going to do on every play, he's going to try and get as much positive gains as possible on every play. Not throw the ball away, but he's gonna scramble and try and get as positive plays as possible.
Yeah,
and that's my mindset with Jordan Love.
Yeah,
Puka just won?
Yeah, I stopped rapping Puka. But I had Christian Watson on that team too, so that was the main reason why Devil was up there on QB and got Jordan Love. So we're seeing Leonard Fournette go. Leonard Fournette here.
Leonard.
He's not been picked up yet.
Leonard's kind of like fell because like he used to go like around 14th, 15th round. Like he's kind of fell a little bit.
Well, there's not too much buzz about him, right?
No. The thing that people need to focus on is that, hey, like New England just traded away Pierre Strong.
Right.
And they brought him in for a workout. And then they didn't sign him. So they saw something in Leonard Fournette, or they didn't see something in Leonard Fournette.
For sure.
And that means a lot coming out of that organization. So
and that could be speaking volumes across the NFL, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these owners are talking to each other.
And people trust the New England system. So like other teams kind of trust that system. Yeah. Wide receiver wise, like they need to, Right. But running back wise, they should. Dawson Knox just went in the 18th round.
Wow.
That's nuts, man. That is nuts. Sam Laporta went 10. Where did Kincaid go? Kincaid went in the 9th round. Kincaid went on the 9th round. And Dawson went.
Last pick. I love these last picks.
It is, man. You see what with Purdy, But now you got your defense out the way, kicker out the way, so you don't necessarily have to go kicker or defense where I typically wait and punt kicker to like that 19th, 20th round. Now you can take a guy who's still on the board. Who you think? Well, actually,
McLaughlin.
What?
Denver running back.
Stop it, man. Stop, man. We must say, hey, Dio and I must say, it's like, hey, man, like, don't say nothing about McLaughlin.
Jaleel McLaughlin.
Hey, he's 5'7", 185 pounds. Stop it. Stop it. You're right. Stop it, man. Like, no. He's a practice squad guy. Oh, man. We had fun with that one today. But normally, because we don't normally live stream, so like we can like talk freely when we're drafting. Now we can't. So, right. You just have to wait.
One of the guys in my queue went.
Oh man. ESPN just pushed a notification that CJ Stroud is named the #1 quarterback. Fam, like stop it. Stop it. Thanks for that information. Oh man. Oh, Mechie or Woods? Which Houston receiver are we getting at? Mechie or Woods?
Is someone asking?
Yeah, like somebody's asking.
Neither.
Neither here, although you should be taking a little Woods here.
I guess you could take Woods. I would.
He's running with the ones.
Yeah. I just think kind of like on Tank Dell, to be quite honest.
Yeah. For sure.
So I'm gonna take.
17.
He couldn't be with us today. our boy Dio.
Yeah.
So
Shout out Dio.
this for him.
He has all the inside information.
That's for him.
Who's your pick? Cole Turner. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was for him. That was
Cole
for him.
Turner. He's been beat that Cole Turner drop
Yeah.
for weeks now. For weeks, man.
Yeah, that was it. In the queue, I had Elijah Dotson and Travion Williams were the other two.
Yeah,
All right.
I like those.
All right, that's it.
That's it, man. It is done. Cole Turner with the last pick, Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, that was a quick draft. I like that.
Hopefully, you got some more insight on the injuries themselves.
Yeah.
A little bit more, again, valuable information as you start picking, some of your draft picks, and you start coming up with some of the decisions. More specifically, who do I trust? Who do I not trust? More specifically on your high stakes leagues. Those are some big decisions you're making at that point.
Yeah, drafting out of that 2 slot is tough.
If you're home league, you want to smash your brother and sister.
Right.
It's gonna make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Hope that give you some more insight.
Yeah, drafting out of that 2 position is tough. Like we've normally been drafting kind of later, like in the drafts, and so like when you draft so early, you kind of have to hit on Jamar Chase because if you don't, then like in that second round,
that I'm not to worry about. I think my advice if you're drafting on the ends is, again, I'm gonna keep saying it, but specifically here, ignore ADP.
Mm-hmm.
Take who you want. Take who, like if you were drafting, at the 10th spot, who would you take? And if whoever you take there, you feel just as comfortable taking them in the 2, and you feel like those guys are better at the 2, then take them there. Like, don't feel like you got to be like, don't feel as if you have to put yourself in a corner because a certain guy, T. Higgins always goes at this spot. Like, I got to take him now. You don't have to. And you don't have to take guys that are just in that range. You can look further down, guys that go in round 3 or early round 4. Like, those guys are not making it back to you.
Yeah.
So that whole range of players is available to you. There's like 24 players theoretically, or 23 players that are available to you that may not make it back to you. So feel comfortable, broadening your, tier and player pool outside of just what's in that area and what's in that region of the board.
Yeah, just don't get bound to those ADPs. Right?
Yeah.
You got to be very flexible in doing that.
All right, guys, that is it for this episode. Please like, rate, subscribe. We are out.
All right, fellas.
Yes,
All right, man.
That was a good draft.
On the couch, man.
Yes, sir.
That was helpful.
Felt good.
I need you next to me every single
Felt
time.